Good evening and welcome to Pakistan Today News from our New York studio. I'm Chris Taylor. The White House says the Donald Trump administration has not ruled out the possibility of deploying U.S. ground troops in Iran as the conflict in the Middle East continues to escalate. Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt stated that while sending troops is not part of the current strategy, the option remains on the table in order to maintain what officials describe as strategic flexibility. At present, the United States and Israel are relying on air and naval strikes under an ongoing military campaign against Iranian targets. Officials claim nearly 2,000 sites have already been struck, and Washington says it is moving closer to gaining operational control of Iranian airspace. However, the possibility of American ground forces entering the conflict has sparked concern in the U.S. Congress, where several lawmakers warn that deeper involvement could draw the United States into a prolonged and costly war. Meanwhile, Iran claims it has taken complete control of the strategic Strait of Hormuz, one of the world's most critical routes for global oil shipments. Iranian officials say vessels attempting to pass through the strait could face missile or drone attacks. The conflict has already resulted in more than 1,000 reported deaths inside Iran. Israel says it plans to continue its military campaign for at least another 1 to 2 weeks. Iran has also launched missile and drone strikes across the region, targeting U.S. facilities and allied positions. The United Nations has voiced alarm over the rapidly intensifying situation, stating that escalating attacks by all sides risk violating the principles of the UN Charter and threatening wider regional stability. Global markets are also reacting to the growing tensions. Oil prices surged by more than 3% as the conflict intensified. Brent crude climbed to nearly $84 per barrel amid fears that supplies could be disrupted if the Strait of Hormuz becomes unsafe for shipping. Markets remain on edge after reports of attacks on oil tankers near the key maritime corridor. Analysts warn that prolonged fighting between Iran and its rivals could significantly disrupt oil and gas exports from the region. Iraq has already reduced crude output because of storage and export limitations, while Qatar has declared force majeure on some gas exports, raising additional concerns about the stability of global energy supplies. The conflict has also drawn attention to growing military cooperation between the United States and India. A former advisor to the U.S. Defense Secretary claimed the U.S. Navy may increasingly rely on Indian ports for docking and logistics as risks rise at bases in the Gulf region. However, India's foreign ministry has strongly rejected the claim, calling it false and fabricated. Analysts say U.S.-India defense cooperation is primarily focused on maritime security in the Indo-Pacific, while India continues to maintain strategic balance in its relationships with countries including Iran, Russia, and the United States. In South Asia, voters in Nepal are casting ballots in a crucial parliamentary election that could shape the country's future political direction. The vote comes 6 months after deadly anti-corruption protests that led to the collapse of the previous government. Nearly 19 million people are eligible to vote to choose a new parliament. The election pits veteran political leaders against a new wave of younger candidates promising reform, transparency, and better governance. Authorities have tightened security across the country, with thousands of police officers and soldiers deployed to guard polling stations. Political analysts say it is unlikely that any single party will secure a clear majority, raising the possibility of a coalition government emerging after the vote. Back in Pakistan, the Election Commission has summoned Interior Minister Mohsin Naqvi over delays in holding local government elections in Islamabad. The term of the capital's last local government expired in February 2021, leaving nearly 2.5 million residents without elected local representation. A 5-member bench headed by Chief Election Commissioner Sikandar Sultan Raja heard the case and expressed concern over the Interior Ministry's failure to respond to multiple letters regarding demarcation and maps for town corporations. The commission directed that the Interior Secretary be issued a contempt notice and ordered Mohsin Naqvi to appear at the next hearing. Authorities have been given until March 12 to provide the required data. For more on this story, we go to our Islamabad correspondent, Sarah William.
The Election Commission's decision to summon Interior Minister Mohsin Naqvi reflects growing frustration over the prolonged delay in holding local government elections in the federal capital. Officials say the lack of updated demarcation data and administrative maps has stalled the electoral process for several years. Political analysts argue that without elected local bodies, residents of Islamabad have limited representation in addressing municipal issues and development planning. The Commission's directive giving authorities until March 12th is being seen as a final opportunity for the Interior Ministry to provide the necessary documentation. If the requirements are not met, legal consequences could follow for senior officials involved in the delay.
Our thanks to Sarah William reporting from Islamabad. Finally, Pakistan has reported its first case of poliomyelitis for the year 2026. Health authorities say the virus was detected in a child in Sujawal district in Sindh province. Officials warn that the case highlights continued risks of transmission in vulnerable communities. The National Emergency Operations Center says Pakistan has reduced polio cases by approximately 99.8% since 1994 through extensive vaccination campaigns. However, health officials stress that sustained immunization efforts and community cooperation remain essential if the country is to completely eliminate the virus. That's all for now. You're watching Pakistan Today News. I'm Chris Taylor.